Something happens when a woman grows older that almost no one wants to talk about. We cover it with soft words, maturity, wisdom, grace. But beneath the polite language, there's a biological and psychological reality that men with clear eyes have always noticed. Cesare Lombroso, the controversial Italian criminologist, wrote about it bluntly in a way most people today would find shocking. He claimed that women, in general, can be more intense in jealousy, ferocity, and vengeance than men, and that these traits become more obvious with age. What he meant was simple. Beauty hides what time eventually reveals. Youth softens a woman's instincts and wraps them in the glow of desire. Take away that glow. Let time erode her beauty, and you start to see the raw psychology that was always there. Smart men sense this long before scientists give it a name. They see how older women, stripped of youth, often display more of the primal instincts Lombroso described. For around 20 years, many women are buoyed by male attention. Compliments, invitations, glances, it all becomes part of daily life. This isn't just pleasant. It becomes an entire sense of existence. Then, almost overnight, the world grows quiet. Where once she was surrounded by storms of desire, now there is silence. And that silence is not philosophical, it's chemical, a shock to the system. Lombroso claimed jealousy and insecurity intensify with age. The hunger for validation sharpens, becoming more dangerous as the sources dry up. Smart men know that this hunger isn't satisfied by loyalty or devotion, because those things are constants. What she craves is novelty, the unpredictable proof that she still matters to strangers. This is why older women can become unstable or unpredictable, not always, but often enough for men who notice patterns to step back. Do you see the illusion? At 25, her laughter seems genuine, her sweetness feels real, her loyalty unshakable. But these qualities aren't fixed. They're fueled. They run on the constant supply of attention that youth and beauty provide. When that fuel dries up, the personality can shift. Lombroso argued that when deprived of this fuel, women often turn inward, sometimes destructively. He called it a kind of atavism, the resurfacing of older, more primitive traits once restrained by youth and beauty. To the average observer, it looks like a midlife crisis, a sudden rebellion, or desperation. But to the observant man, it's predictable biology. It's the mask of youth slipping away. It's the reminder that what he saw at 25 was never eternal. He avoids older women not out of malice, but because he refuses to tie his life to someone in revolt against her own fading reflection. And here lies the paradox. Men age differently. A 40-year-old man is told his best years are ahead. Wisdom and resources amplify his worth. His silver hair becomes a sign of distinction. But a 40-year-old woman is told the opposite, that she's invisible, expired, past her prime. Lombroso saw this as nature's logic, not society's cruelty. He cataloged how older women often became more bitter, erratic, or manipulative because they couldn't accept the verdict of time. Men grounded in philosophy understand this asymmetry and live accordingly. They know that investing in a woman who's fighting time itself is like tying yourself to a collapsing building. You've probably seen it. A woman who once seemed secure now stares too long in mirrors, changes her clothes, routines, even her friends, trying to resurrect something that's already gone. A man with average eyes might see a wife working on herself, but a man who studies patterns sees Lombroso's insight in real time, the decline of external beauty revealing the hidden machinery of jealousy, vanity, and cunning. And so he steps back. This isn't cruelty. It's clarity. The tragedy of the modern world is that it flatters women into believing they can cheat nature. Entire industries are built on this illusion. Serums, surgeries, gyms, filters, apps, each promising to erase the clock. But as Lombroso wrote in La Donna Delinquenti, when beauty fades, jealousy grows. When the possibility of reproduction ends, the thirst for domination appears. What Lombroso saw And what many men still sense is that the end of youthful desirability does not calm women. It inflames them. They double down. They fight reality itself. And in that fight, they often drag men into the chaos. Smart men avoid older women not because of cruelty or superficiality, but because they refuse to be pulled into that desperate struggle. Picture the scene. A man at 45, secure, established, maybe even wealthier than in his youth. He feels his value increasing. Women who once ignored him now notice him. He's told he's aged like wine. Meanwhile, his female counterpart is told the opposite. Her worth is depreciating like currency in free fall. Lombroso cataloged the symptoms with scientific precision: bitterness, resentment, manipulation, turning affection into a weapon. These traits were always present but masked by beauty. Time simply unmasks them. The smart man doesn't judge. He observes. He doesn't hate. He avoids. The average man, though, tells himself stories. He marries at 30, believes in permanence, refuses to acknowledge that time is the silent rival in every marriage. He convinces himself the woman who adored him at 25 will be the same at 45. Then one day, he wakes up to a stranger. Her laughter has changed. Her words are sharper. Her eyes wander. He feels betrayed. But Lombroso would have said plainly, this was always in her. The collapse isn't a betrayal of you. It's the betrayal of reality itself. And the intelligent man doesn't build his house on ground he knows will sink. When a woman loses the currency of beauty, she searches for a new one. Some chase status, others novelty, others younger men to remind themselves they still can. Lombroso argued this shift isn't always a free choice, but a necessity. When one avenue of power closes, another must open. This is why older women often seek control, influence, or emotional leverage. Smart men see the shift, and instead of trying to negotiate with it, they step back. They know that a woman fighting to resurrect youth will never have peace, and a woman without peace will never bring peace to a man. This isn't misogyny. This is pattern recognition. Lombroso's writings weren't romantic fantasies. They were case studies, dissections of the human soul under pressure. He documented jealous widows poisoning rivals, aging courtesans turning manipulative, matrons whose devotion decayed into bitterness. These were not accidents. They were predictable outcomes. Smart men, men who study history and psychology, absorb these lessons. They don't swim against the tide of biology. They accept the current and chart their course around it. So when someone asks, why do intelligent men avoid older women? The answer is simple, because they see what most men refuse to see. They understand that behind the polite smiles is a storm raging against mortality itself. There's a cruel difference between how men and women age. A man looks in the mirror, sees his hair thinning, his jaw softening, his body slower. He shrugs, leans into other strengths. But when a woman confronts the same mirror and sees beauty dimming, her terror is existential. Lombroso wrote, "The criminal woman is often only the exaggerated form of the ordinary woman deprived of beauty or maternal role." That statement means that what erupts in old age, bitterness, jealousy, manipulation, isn't new. It's the exaggeration of instincts that were always there, waiting beneath the mask of youth. When beauty and fertility collapse, the instincts emerge in full force. Smart men anticipate this and avoid it. They're not surprised when the change comes because they already expected it. Think about the men who ignored this wisdom. They told themselves, my wife is different. She would never betray me. She doesn't need more than what we've built. Yet as time marched on, they watched her become someone else. The woman who once found joy in family life now scours her phone for likes, messages, flattery from strangers. She begins to smile more at the man at work than at her husband at home. She starts dressing for others, not for herself, and certainly not for him. And when she finally crosses the line, the man says the tragic words, I never saw it coming, but he should have. Lombroso saw it a century ago. Smart men see it today. The signs are always there, glowing like warnings in the dark. Some might ask, but isn't this just insecurity? Can't a strong woman resist? The answer isn't that easy. Lombroso's research, though flawed and controversial, revealed a reality we still witness. Aging women cling to what remains of their power with ferocity, often more than men ever display. Because for men, worth can shift to resources, status, wisdom, strength. But for women, if beauty was her foundation, there's no replacement strong enough to hold her identity once that foundation crumbles. This is why smart men avoid older women, not out of cruelty, but out of foresight. They refuse to anchor themselves to a collapsing structure. And there's another layer, resentment. Lombroso noted how women deprived of youth often turned their jealousy into cruelty, lashing out at men and younger women who mirrored what they had lost. Smart men see this and recoil. They know that once love turns to resentment, once desire turns to envy, a woman becomes unrecognizable. She's not their partner anymore. She's their rival, their judge, their accuser. And no intelligent man binds himself to such an adversary. The great men of history didn't simply marry beauty. They studied what happens when beauty fades. They saw that the woman who seemed tender at 20 could transform by 40. Cesare Lombroso, often accused of being too brutal, wrote plainly that old age in women is more dangerous than in men because beauty, her principal defense, is lost, and with it, her chief source of power. For the average man, old age brings limitations, but also dignity, authority, even magnetism. For a woman, it brings the evaporation of what she was taught to value most. When that power disappears, instincts twist inward, reaching for whatever scraps remain. Smart men avoid older women because they know they're not choosing a partner, but a battlefield, a place where the war against time is fought daily and every man in her orbit becomes collateral damage. Consider the psychology. For 2 decades she could smile and the world bent toward her. That smile was currency, her body an empire. She knew no other self than the adored self. But when the world grows indifferent, when smiles no longer draw stares, when her empire collapses into silence, she does not calmly retire her crown. She clutches it tighter. She demands that life still treat her as it once did, and the tragedy is that life cannot do that. Smart men see this demand for what it is, an impossible expectation. To bind yourself to an older woman, desperate to be 20 again, is to live beside a ghost who haunts herself. You cannot satisfy her because what she mourns is not you, but her own vanished reflection. This is where the danger emerges. Lombroso observed that aging women often turn to manipulation, intrigue, and jealousy to regain what nature had stolen. He cited cases of women spreading lies, fueling rivalries, even turning violent, all driven by the terror of invisibility. While his critics called his conclusions cruel, the patterns he described still echo today. Smart men know that love cannot erase these instincts and devotion cannot undo biology. They don't hate older women. They simply understand the inevitability of this transformation and act with self-preservation. Meanwhile, the younger man who doesn't know this history believes her words when she says she's different, that she's matured, that she seeks only peace. But within months, he sees the cracks, the jealousy, the sudden accusations, the volatility. He feels the energy of desperation, and it exhausts him. He begins to understand what Lombroso cataloged, but by then, it's too late. Smart men don't put themselves in that position. They recognize the signs. They remember the warnings of philosophy and science. And they keep their distance. In truth, the tragedy isn't just hers, it's society's. We trained women from birth to equate their worth with beauty and youth, then act surprised when, stripped of that currency, they panic. Lombroso's work was harsh because he didn't pretend this wasn't happening. He saw that when culture builds an identity on an unstable foundation, collapse is inevitable. And collapse always breeds chaos. For the man, awareness is survival. He understands that he can't repair a foundation built by an entire culture. He can't heal decades of conditioning. What he can do is choose where he invests his time, his energy, his future. Smart men choose to build with women whose self-worth isn't welded entirely to appearance, or they build alone. The sad irony is that the very women who could transcend this, who could age with true dignity and inner strength, are often the ones men quietly admire from afar. They're rare, but they exist. These are the women who, from youth, built an identity beyond appearance. They cultivated discipline, skill, compassion, and wisdom. They don't compete with younger women because their value isn't in competition at all. Lombroso hinted at this too. Even within his bleak catalog of pathology, he noted exceptions. Women who aged with calm power, whose lives were built on service or intellect rather than seduction or vanity. He wrote that such women escape the deformities of character because they're not trying to claw back what time has taken. They've already built something untouchable. 5. Smart men don't hate older women. They hate desperation, manipulation, envy, and these can appear in anyone, but are statistically more likely in women who built their identity solely on youth. This is why avoid older women is shorthand for avoid the psychology of someone at war with time. It's not a rejection of age itself, but of unresolved grief masquerading as power. You can see this clearly in relationships around you. Notice the difference between an older woman who embraced her new chapter and one who clings to her old chapter. The first is relaxed, generous, curious. The second is critical, restless, and prone to drama. Men sense this instinctively, even if they can't articulate it. Lombroso's greatest insight wasn't about crime. It was about human limits. When you deny nature, you pay a price. When you ignore patterns, you get blindsided. And when you build your life on illusions, reality feels like betrayal. Smart men simply opt out of that cycle. They're not superior, they're strategic. And here lies the final uncomfortable truth. Society rewards men for wisdom gained through pain, but it punishes women for the same. An older man with scars is called experienced. An older woman with scars is called bitter. This double standard is cruel, yet it exists. Lombroso observed it in 1890. We still see it in August 2025. If you're a man reading this, the lesson isn't hate women. It's study patterns and act accordingly. Build your own value, diversify your strengths, and understand the human nature of those you choose to trust. If you're a woman reading this, the lesson isn't you're doomed. It's build your identity on something deeper than youth. Both paths demand discipline, but only one leads to stability. In the end, the smart man's avoidance of older women isn't personal. It's mathematical. He's reducing risk. He's acknowledging a probability curve. The likelihood of drama, jealousy, and manipulation increases when youth-based identity erodes. He's not betting against every individual woman. He's betting against the odds. Does this mean older women can never find love? Of course not. It means the quality of love they attract depends on whether they've made peace with time. Men, especially wise men, are drawn to peace. But they're repelled by war, especially a war no one can win. A woman at peace with aging is magnetic. A woman at war with aging is radioactive. Cesare Lombroso, writing in an age before social media, couldn't imagine how digital platforms would magnify these dynamics. Today, the fight against invisibility is global, constant, and algorithm-driven. Likes and comments become the new version of admirers in the street. And the desperation to hold attention becomes stronger, louder, and more public. Yet even now, the solution is the same. Build identity beyond the external. Only then can aging become transformation instead of collapse. Smart men quietly hope more women do this, because the rare ones who succeed become extraordinary companions, wise, calm, unshakable. We must also acknowledge Lombroso's limits. His writings were often steeped in Victorian biases and crude stereotypes. He conflated biology with morality and sometimes projected his own prejudices onto his subjects. Modern science rightly rejects much of his determinism. But even a biased observer can stumble onto truths about human behavior, especially when those truths remain visible a century later. The essential point endures. Humans cling to power when it slips away. Women whose power was beauty will cling hardest when beauty fades. Men who recognize this pattern choose accordingly. And those who don't, those who romanticize away reality, eventually pay. So when you hear someone say, "Smart men avoid older women," understand it's not a slogan, but a shorthand for a larger pattern. It's about energy, psychology, and the trajectory of identity over time. The wise man sees the full arc. The unwise man only sees the moment. And for the women who read this and feel offended, realize that offense is not destiny. You can break the pattern. You can choose to age on your own terms, to become the kind of woman who draws admiration not for her reflection, but for her substance. That is power no clock can touch. This is the future Lombroso could not foresee. A future where knowledge of patterns can liberate rather than condemn. Where men and women both see the forces shaping them and choose a different response. Where aging isn't a war, but a rite of passage. And where partnership isn't built on illusion, but on reality strong enough to weather time. Until then, smart men will continue to choose carefully. They will remember that desire fades, but patterns persist. And they will act, as all wise people do, not on wishes, but on knowledge.